All right. Thank you for joining today's sales enablement session. My name is John with the Sales and Customer Enablement team. We are recording this meeting. We're going to make it publicly available on our company YouTube channel later today. Please make sure that your microphone is muted, and we'll be happy to take questions for about 20 minutes at the end of the presentation. Today's topic is the Dev Section Outlook for the next year, and our expert speakers are Eric Brinkman and John Jeremiah from Marketing.
Yeah, thanks, John. Really excited to be here. So my name's Eric. I'm the product director for the Dev section. And so the way we're going to do this is I'm going to talk through kind of the high-level themes for Dev over the next year, things we're going to be focused on. It's not going to get into a ton of specifics, like specific epics or issues, just kind of high-level themes that the teams will be focused on. Then I'm going to pass it over to John, who's going to talk about some of the analyst work that we've been doing, and then we'll open it up for questions. And I put the doc for questions in the Zoom chat, so please start populating questions there as we go along. All right, and can I get a thumbs up? Can everyone see my screen? Awesome, thank you, Kyla. So this is a handbook page. It's public and it lives at /direction/dev. You can find other section pages here as well. So if you're looking for CI/CD or ops, you can also find them here. And basically, just as a quick overview, Dev is the first 3 stages of the DevOps lifecycle as we've defined at GitLab. So that's what we call manage, plan, and create. I previously presented this plan, and we did a longer Q&A as well. And so you can take a look at the video that's embedded at the top of this page if you wanted to understand what other questions engineering, product design, other PMs have asked as well. So take a look there. It's about 55 minutes long, but if you don't get your question asked, you can watch that, and of course ping me offline if you need to. Just a quick overview. So one of the things that's really interesting about the Dev section is that we span so much scope, and we really compete in a ton of different areas. So Dev really spans things like value stream management, all of the project portfolio management, enterprise agile planning tools, source code management, IDEs, design management, even ITSM with some of our service desk functionality. So it's hard to truly kind of estimate our total addressable market for the Dev section. We know that it's at least 3 billion based off of a few analyst reports. It's likely far higher than that, especially if we capitalize on really nailing like the designer experience. That's a really big market. Things like the CRM market are also really big that plan could eventually morph into over time. So we have a huge market ahead of us to go and actually capitalize on, which is really exciting. And then there's a whole bunch of other great information here that I'm not going to spend time on because we're already 3 minutes into this. We've got a SWOT analysis here if you want to understand what we think some of our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are. And then also some vision themes, which are really targeted at the 3-year level. So I'm going to skip those for now and really focus on what we're going to do kind of at the 1-year level, which is what we call plan. Plan is scoped to 1 year, strategy is scoped to 3 years. So in manage, there's a few themes that we're going to focus on. The first one is enterprise readiness. What does this mean? Well, it means a lot of things, but for manage, what it means is nailing the off functionality that customers need for both self-managed and running GitLab on gitlab.com. And so you can see that in the first bullet here. The other one is understanding how we can improve the product to help individuals and organizations that require more regulation and who are trying to adhere to specific compliance regimes. We have invested a lot of work into making our logging and audit capabilities a lot more robust, and we're going to continue to do that over the next 12 months. We're also going to actually help customers understand and measure some of the things that are inside of GitLab from a compliance perspective. So who's last touched a specific project, who has access, and when was the last time each of the people in a project accessed those things, and then making that available via UI as well as API. It's really important to a lot of people that are in regulated industries. Lowering time to production for our customers. So we've had some analytics capabilities inside of GitLab for quite a while. We've had cycle analytics as a feature. We really want our customers to understand where the inefficiencies in their software development lifecycle is going to be. We've started launching features like productivity analytics in GitLab 12.3. We'll continue making that more robust and also investing into things like code analytics, which will help customers analyze their code base as well. So really investing into analytics. Import, a great import experience is something that Manage is going to be focused on, because very few people are coming to GitLab and not using previous tools. Most people are using some sort of cobbled together DevOps toolchain that consists of GitHub and Jenkins and maybe Jira. And so being able to import data from these other competing tools is something that we're going to be focused on too. We want to make a great import experience, and we'll start with things like Jenkins and GitHub first, and then expand out from there. And then the last theme in Manage is just creating a better way to organize individuals. Right now, we really have one construct inside of GitLab for managing a team, and it's really the group feature that we have, and it's kind of a foundational piece of the GitLab architecture. But many organizations use groups to kind of segment permissions. They use them to segment who has access to specific things, and it's not a great tool for delineating who's actually on a team. And so we want to make a team structure inside of GitLab, and then also introduce the concept of what we're thinking of calling a workspace, where you could have either like a team dashboard for things that your team cares about, or even a personal dashboard for something that you personally care about as well. So that's Manage. Let me quickly move on to Plan, and then I'll touch on Create, and then we'll go from there. Plan is going to get a lot of investment in 2020. One of the first areas that we're going to focus on is Kanban boards. Boards are a great feature inside of GitLab, but they are hard to work with in the construct of your own contextual experience inside of GitLab. What I mean by that is, if you want to just quickly edit an issue inside of a board, you can't do that today. You have to click on it, and you have to open up a new tab, and then you get into the situation where you've got 40 tabs open, and then you kind of lost track of what you were doing. You lose your context. We want to make that easier. We want to make the ability to edit things easier inside of a board. We want to provide things like epic swim lanes inside of boards, so you can not just have board lists, but also horizontal swim lanes to help structure work inside of a board. The other thing that's real important too is real time. And I'm going to talk about this in Create as well. But boards do not get updated on real time. So if I'm looking at a board and John Jeremiah is looking at the same board, if I drag a card, he doesn't see it until he refreshes. And so we're going to make that a lot better as well. We also want the ability to import from Jira without losing required data. We talked about importing and Manage, but there's a number of features we're actually missing inside a Plan for us to successfully and I guess in a very efficient way import data from Jira. And so we're going to invest in that. Things like cumulative flow diagrams, enforced workflows will help kind of lower the barrier of entry from Jira into GitLab Plan features. Enhancing portfolio and project management, project roadmaps, easy top-down planning. Right now, it's very difficult to start with like a strategic objective or some sort of top-level milestone that you want to then drill down into and say, hey, I want to start with maybe a strategic theme, then create a bunch of epics, then create a bunch of issues. It's very difficult to do that inside of GitLab today. It's also difficult to link those things without a bunch of copy and paste kung fu. That's going to be a much easier experience, or we're planning on that being an easier experience in 2020. Investing in reporting analytics, and then also requirements management. Requirements management is the ability to create a requirement and then link that requirement down to each piece of work that happened in the software development lifecycle. So mapping a requirement all the way down to a specific line of code or a specific test. Super important, and there's some really big pieces of software in this industry that do this, such as IBM Doors and Jama software that a lot of customers have to use but don't necessarily really like using. And so we want to make a better experience for those individuals. And then lastly, I'll quickly touch on Create and we'll move on. Create has a ton of stuff going for it. First is real time. We need to fully embrace real time, like real time merge request descriptions, real time updates on on a merge request if you're viewing the same diff, real time inside of the web IDE if you are editing something at the same time with another person. Really exciting. There's a ton of opportunity in real time. Git availability and performance. I know this is something that is a single point of failure for a lot of customers today. It's Gitly, and we really want Gitly to be to be highly available, or have that architecture available to customers that want to invest into that architecture. So we're investing a lot there. Code review is something we're already a leader in. We have to continue to be a leader. We want code review to be more of like an IDE-like experience that's more interactive. Syntax highlighting, jump to definition, type signatures, adding support for first-class reviewers. These are things that we know we need to do, and we want to make that experience better and continue investing there. Making large files just work in Git. Continuing investment in our wiki product is something that I want to call out. We haven't done a ton with the wiki in 2019, but it's something I want to change in 2020. I'm not looking for massive investment here, but we need to do things like pull the wiki up to the group level, just make it work a little bit better, enhance the markdown formatting, and these types of things. So we're going to make the wiki just easier to use in general. We're also going to focus on the gaps in the design management workflow. So these are things like if a designer provides an asset to the front end team, there's no product in the market today that can very quickly check if what the front end developer actually implemented matched what the designer checked in. This is a unique gap that I think GitLab can solve pretty well, because we could compare those things. We want to be the single data store for designs. And so it's something I'm really excited about focusing on. But then also just the ability to version design assets a little bit easier, but also do like quick architecture sketches inside of issues, something that we're also investing in. We want to make our editor experience better. I know I'm going quick, so bear with me. I have a lot to get through, but not a lot of time. Our current web IDE is useful for small changes, but it's not at a place where it could actually replace, a developer's local IDE. So we want to continue investing and enhancing that experience. We want things like client-side evaluation, server-side evaluation, live coding features for pair programming to be a part of our IDE experience. And so we want to invest there as well. And then if you came to the last dev section group conversation, which was on November 5th, you also heard us build a new handbook group, which is called the Static Site Editor Group. So this is going to be a team that's focused on a great static site editing experience, as well as improvements into our handbook. I just ran through that as fast as I could. And so I want to hand it over to John to talk about the analyst stuff, and then we can have about 15 minutes left for Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think it's incredibly important that everyone understand the vision and strategy that we're building, and the fact that these pages exist along with the recordings, because frankly, this is one of the key differentiators. If we think about command of the message and differentiators of what makes GitLab different, the fact that these pages exist, that Eric and team are curating these and evolving these, means we're listening and we're open and transparent about what we do and the way we work. And I think this is one of the things that all of you have to realize as you talk to customers. It's a differentiator. It's what makes us different. And I apologize for background noise. I am in a hotel lobby, so I'm going to do my very best with this. I want to quickly share a slide and a view of the Enterprise Agile Planning report, which will also be included in the call to action. And it's related to what we're talking about. In the most recent report that came out, this was just a few months ago, they reported out as to where different organizations are at with enterprise agile planning tools. So this is one that we've been competing in and we're growing in. And I think I want to share, at least just pause for a moment on the Magic Quadrant and share, because I think it's important to realize that as a visionary, they are really seeing GitLab and what we're doing in our space and the vision that we're building towards with what we're doing with Kanban boards and plan and Agile as being, we're moving the dial, we're moving forward. When I look at this, I see us as the second farthest to the right on vision, on the completeness of vision. And as we continue to grow and excel, we are going to move further up. If I look back several years ago, AgileCraft was actually down about where we are several years ago. And so the trajectory that we have, the potential we have, is to move up and to the right. The other thing to realize as well is that in enterprise agile planning, we are one of three organizations and companies that were customer choice award winners. So that's another, feather in our cap that we've, when we competed and we took in customer reviews for enterprise agile planning, our reviews were sufficiently deep and broad with, a 4.6 average rating, I think. I can get that specific for you, but again, these are a couple of proof points for how strong we are in this space and how we're getting stronger. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and I want to make sure we have enough time for Q&A and questions. And going to the doc, I'm going to ask the first question if nobody else has questions.
Actually,
Right.
I had a question on there for Eric, actually,
Yeah,
John.
yeah, go ahead, John. You go first.
Yeah, so Eric, in the create stage, you didn't see better large file support as a priority. I know James Ramsey's working on a lot of this stuff, so I'm surprised to not see it as a priority. Any thoughts on
yeah, it actually is there. I just closed the page to go to I think it's called something like just make large files work in Git. Let me find the header for you real quick.
Sure.
I thought I saw it in there when you were going through it.
Yeah, it's the fourth bolded sentence under create, John, which says making large files just work in Git.
Oh, okay, I guess I was sort of trying to focus on like the word large file support. So, but yes, fair enough.
Yeah, exactly. Well, something that's interesting here though is that this isn't just like an investment to make like LFS work better. This is an actual investment into just making like the whole Git foundation around large files work better. Right now with LFS, like one of the primary challenges is like you have to know that LFS exists. You have to know to put a file into that LFS store, and then you have to know like how to reference it and where to go get it. One of the things that we're thinking about obviously is partial clone. We've released partial clone in alpha in the last release, which lets you kind of say, hey, I don't want to grab that file when I clone, because we don't want people to have to think about where I'm storing files. We don't want to have people have to go think, hey, I'll put that in LFS or not put that in LFS based off of some sort of criteria. We just want everything to go into Git and then to give you the controls to get stuff out of Git if you need to or not. But yeah, it's definitely a huge theme. And we actually view that as an initial purchase growth driver as well. And so that's the other thing I didn't call out here, but you can see which of these ones are targeted towards kind of that initial purchase, which are targeted to expansion and which are targeted to retention.
Well, and I know for some of our customers, which I can't mention here, but there's a lot of growth opportunity at existing customers who their developers use GitLab, but some of their backend storage folks or their artists use Perforce is a good example for their large files. So I think there's a lot of growth potential here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, John.
Sherry, do you want to verbalize your comments?
Yes, I'm trying to type, not typing enough. I just joined the QBR yesterday and last couple of days, and I heard fair bit of feedback on running into enterprise accounts that they're using IBM Rational, and right now it is fairly difficult to directly compete against that. So I'm very excited to hear about the features around the requirements management and our approach to take more traditional enterprise requirements management then down to the Agile and down to the dev specific tasks. I just want to get a little bit more details on that and understand when we'll have feature ready that we can in the field talking to enterprise start introducing those roadmap items to them.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I like how you diplomatically put it that it's difficult to compete. It's actually impossible for us to compete right now with the existing functionality, and we don't shy away from that. We know this is a big use case that we're not serving at this point in time with GitLab, and so yeah, it's difficult. And I just want you to know that we are investing in this area. We've got a product manager that's focused on requirements management. To answer your question specifically, there is not like 1 or 2 features that I think we'll have to launch in the near future that says, you know, we can now go compete with something like an IBM Doors, which has been in development for years.
Yes.
But what I can tell you is in 12.6, we are planning on releasing the Mdc of Requirements Management, which is very simply the ability to define a first class requirement.
Mm-hmm.
And this is important because you could define requirements in issues, but issues do not have the kind of rigid structure necessary to actually define requirements, because for most regulated industries, these requirements should never change. And issues are far too malleable, and you can update them, you can change them. They're not even version controlled at this point in time. So that's our MVC. Beyond that, we'll be iterating every single month, every single release. We'll be making requirements management a little bit better by adding new features. I don't know at what point in the future we'll get to when we can say, hey, we're a drop-in replacement for something like an IBM Doors. It's probably going to take a very long time, but we're going to start next release, and then each release after that will get better.
Yeah, we don't have to directly compete with IBM. We have an advantage where we can take more traditional requirements management done, map very easily into Agile approach. And the IBM, perhaps there are some areas that they don't do a very good job in that. So, you know, we can at least position this new feature to business stakeholders, give them to use a GitLab, because then, you know, we can start getting the whole value chain, you know, from enterprise perspective into our product offerings. So that's why I'm quite keen on tracking this feature development.
Yeah, I think you just hit the nail on the head. We would expect people to come buy GitLab for things in Create and things in Verify. So GitLab source code management and GitLab CI. And as I talked about in our dev conversation a week and a half ago, we want people to move left and right from there. And so I think what's going to happen is we're going to start launching these requirements management features. And as people use GitLab for kind of the bread and butter things, and they realize, oh, wow, they actually have requirements management too. That's really cool. I'm going to start using that. And then that renewal comes up for something like IBM Doors or another product they're using for requirements management. And they think, maybe I don't have to use that anymore. I'll just stick with GitLab. And kind of moving left and right out of the middle of the DevOps lifecycle is something that I think is really powerful for us, and how I see us attacking requirements management from a growth perspective in the near future. I would hope to, at some point, just be able to sell requirements management because the features will be robust enough to stand alone, but it's probably going to be quite a while before we can do that.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
Hey, I want to just, before we go to the next one, I want to just at least point people to it. At the top, I asked 2 questions. If you could type your answer into my 2 questions, a little ad hoc survey. What's the biggest thing you're most excited to see in what Eric just shared and what's missing? So just go ahead and type in your notes up at top in the notes document. Love to catch your feedback asynchronously while we're doing this, but we can go to the next question while we go, because I want to make sure we get that. Cynthia, you're next.
Hi, thanks. Eric, I was wondering if we have any kind of timeline for on the ability to purchase storage on GitLab.com. I know we have a lot of customers asking for this, and it does also actually impact support as well, since a lot of users will often no longer be able to push to their repository when they go over the limit. You know, they're always asking for this, and I know we have a lot of prospects as well, which are like, you know, obviously in the kind of sector, like say video games or, you know, like design or whatever, where there's a lot of assets. And because our current limit includes LFS, then they're really limited on being able to move over to GitLab.com.
Yeah, I think that concern makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, I don't have a good answer for this one. This is an issue that's being driven out of the growth section, not the dev section at this point in time. But I'm happy to circle back with that team and then drop an answer back in the doc later.
Sure, I actually have the link for the growth epic. It focuses though on the implementation of the purchase itself. And my understanding is that the features to kind of actually be able to kind of trigger that additional storage is more on the dev side. But I'll add the link and maybe we can just follow up.
Yeah, please add the link. All of the kind of purchase flow stuff also lives in growth. At one point that did live in manage, that would have been in dev. That's now spun out to growth. But if there's something I'm missing, I'm happy to follow up on it, Cynthia. So yeah, just drop a link and I'll take a look, okay?
All right.
Darwin, you've got the next one.
Sure. I just noticed that in general, all of us who are in code communities and Git-based communities tend to end up lacking a rich expression in our documents because of basically having to hand code markdown, not having instant capability to see that resolved. And Typora is an application that does do both of these, but it's concerning in that we end up with a lot of things like, for instance, great big lists that would be better as a table and other things that make communication a lot harder. I was just wondering if there's any study into this area of UX, and especially checklists are something where we have interactivity on the website, just in MRs and issues. So creating a checklist that makes sense that people can follow in real detail, like even our own onboarding checklists. It'd be nice to have expandable regions, but even just being able to have a table and that kind of stuff would make it a lot more pleasant. Just wondering if there's been any thoughts around this area.
Yeah, I'd say in general, we want to make kind of the markdown editing experience better for not just issues and MR descriptions, but also for things like editing the handbook, which is why we made that handbook team. So the answer is yes. Just as a quick aside, you can already do a collapsible section via Markdown. I'm sure there's.
Is that the HTML way? I tried the HTML way recently, and it wasn't. Oh, it wasn't working in conjunction with checkboxes. That was the problem.
Oh yes. I think that actually still is an issue. Yeah, we want to make this better. I don't have specific issues that I can link you to like on the spot. I think a lot of them do already exist, but yeah, if I have to make a big table, like I'll just use like a free Markdown table editor someplace else and then kind of copy and paste that into my issue description. That's not a great experience. We should make that better. So short answer is yes, we thought about this. We do want to make this better. I would imagine that plan focuses on things like this next year. Just in general, I don't want people to have to know a whole bunch of Markdown tricks just to use the product. So that includes not just issue and merge request descriptions, but also the handbook. We kind of impose this. You really need to know Markdown to edit the handbook as well.
What about direct storage access to those things so that live I could be using Typora and just it actually saves it when I save kind of thing? Is that a possibility, or is that just something that given the underlying architecture is not even possible?
That is pretty much the purview of the static site editor team that we just created. And so we want the ability to do like a side-by-side editing, like you're editing something and then you see kind of how it's rendered. And so yes, like that is absolutely coming. We just have that, we just created that group about 2 weeks ago. And we have our first engineer on it today.
Okay, and I don't know if they have a chance to look at Typora, but it gets rid of this two-pane model, which also drives me crazy. It's back to one. You type in Markdown code, it immediately renders it. You highlight it, it shows you the Markdown. It's kind of like the old word processors that would show codes, and it's really smooth experience in multiplat.
Yeah, it looks pretty cool. I just Googled for it. I'll take a look at this.
Just a quick comment. Darwin's comment about Markdown. I've heard executives suggest to me that Markdown is just something that makes it unintelligible for them to use as a business tool. So I hope that we would consider the use of WYSIWYG approaches versus Markdown going forward.
Yeah, thanks for that, Larry. I think that it's the goal of the static site editor team and in general the handbook is to make that a better experience. So yes. 100% agree. Daniel, you've got the next question.
Hey, so yeah, I'm glad you touched on the web IDE and I'm glad progress is being made on that front. For me, I see the web IDE as something convenient if you're on an iPad and you need to change a single line and push to production, something like that. But increasingly, I'm seeing verbiage in some of these RFIs and RFPs from the federal government where they're very much looking for an IDE to be browser based as part of a complete solution that GitLab could deliver on. And for now, what we're prototyping is a system external to GitLab where it's a browser-based virtual machine with VS Code in it, and that essentially meets all the acceptance criteria for these contracts. But it would be fantastic to see a better IDE built into GitLab. Would also be interesting, and I don't even know how possible this is, but in the same way that Mozilla aims to support Chrome extensions, or maybe they already do, I don't know yet what their timeline is on that. It'd be interesting if, with VS Code as being pretty much a leader, if GitLab's IDE could support client-side extensions for VS Code.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, we had evaluated Thea as integrating Thea as an open source IDE. It's a container-based IDE. This will be the last question, and I'll answer the rest of the questions asynchronously if you drop them in there after this because we're out of time. Thea is really interesting. We kind of ran into some business case issues where we couldn't find a lot of people kind of willing to give up that local IDE experience. So what I would say, Daniel, is maybe you could just work with me offline, and then Kai Armstrong is the editor product manager there. I'd love to understand the scope of your deal, the use case, and it's probably a good input into just helping us understand that use case and then reevaluating our decision. It's possible that we need to really go hard onto a container-based solution, but we haven't seen a ton of demand for that yet, just a kind of handful of customers. So that's what I would say. On the extensions, I'm not sure on that at this point in time. It sounds like a good idea. I don't have a better answer at this point. I think we were considering a container-based IDE to solve for a better experience, but we've kind of put that on hold and considered just iterating on the existing web IDE that we already have.
Got it. Sounds good. Yeah, happy to work with you offline on that.
Yeah, actually, maybe as a first step, you could just drop in your Salesforce link or just Slack me some details on that deal. I'd be really interested to dive in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll send you the document for that.
Thank you, Daniel. All right, John, over to you. I know we're out of time, so I don't know if you need to wrap up or anything like that.
Nope, we're all good. Thanks so much, team. We're all done.
All right.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thanks all.